Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Mary.
Welcome to the fourth episode of Dialogues About Death. Today we are talking about grief, and this is such an important topic. So before we get started, Chris, just say hi to everyone and tell them a little bit about what you're looking forward to, and then
Sure.
if anyone has any questions, by the way, just I guess I should do a little housekeeping, Chris. I'm sorry.
Sure,
So
no
if
problem.
anyone's watching this today live, we would love for you to make a comment about the show. If you have any questions, Chris loves to answer questions live, and
Absolutely.
if you have anyone that you think this might help, if you could share it socially or just tell them to tune in. But if you share it on your own feed, then it'll help them see it. So we appreciate you being on the show today. So, Chris, again, tell us why this topic is so important to you.
You bet. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about grief, and grief is something that's near and dear to me because that's why I kind of got back into the funeral business is to help people through the hard times of their life. And so, before we really get started, I just want to say, you know what? I am not a professional clinical psychologist. This is
Right?
just my personal views about grief that I've encountered with the clients that I've served over the last 25 years or so. And it's just my perspective and my views of how I've gone through some of the grief in my life with the losses of my dad and my wife also. So, and before we get started, I just want to hopefully everybody had a wonderful Christmas and holiday season. Hopefully, I want to just say Happy New Year's to everybody. And we're off to a great start. And I'm looking forward to serving and talking to many people and educating them about issues about death and funeral service and all the wonderful things this year.
That's awesome. I can't believe it's 2024.
I know it's
That's
flies by. We're
that's what
almost at the end of the month.
we're realizing. Like, remember when we used to freak out that it was going to turn into 2000? Remember the
Yeah.
whole we're
Oh
not going to
yeah.
be able to have bread,
Y2K.
and that's 24 years ago.
That's a long
Wow.
time ago.
Absolutely wild. Okay, well, there's three topics that we promoted that we're going to be talking about today. So I
Great.
just kind of wanted to go over what those are, so people can kind of think about. Oh, I would love to ask more questions about that. So
Yeah.
we asked about how does one comfort a friend who just lost a loved one?
Sure.
How is the best way to grieve the loss of a close loved one? And
Mhm.
how does grief change the way you see the world? So, Chris, I'm going to let you answer the first one because I know there's lots of different, and we also are going to talk about the five stages of grief:
Sure.
denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So, tell me a little bit about your perspective about how is a way or some ideas there. I don't think there's a best way, but how would one comfort a friend who just lost a loved one?
Yeah. I think the one of the most important things is to when you're being present is just to be there, just to show support is such a vital thing. So many people kind of alienate themselves during grief. Everybody deals with grief a lot differently. And so you need to pick up those kind of vibes of a person. That sometimes people don't want to talk about it, and talking about it is an important thing. It helps you get it out, some of the emotions and stuff. So I would say being present is one of the most important things to a close friend. If they've lost a parent, if they've lost a spouse or a child, it's just important to be there. You don't have to say a lot. Let that person do the speaking. You just want to be present and give them that moral support.
I love that. That is so important. I think time is our greatest. Your presence is your gift,
Yes.
and that really means a lot. Also, people have asked, like, is it okay to talk about the person who passed away? What would you say to that?
Well, it is. It's definitely a healing thing. It's a little bit more raw at the very beginning. When you're dealing with that loss, you don't really want to talk about it. But as time goes on, it's definitely a lot easier. I lost my wife. It'll be 7 years this February, and I'd have to say probably the first 6 months or even the first year, going through all the holidays and all the occasions of the birthdays, the anniversaries and stuff, that was really hard. But there were people and then friends that would always be reaching out. And I still have people reaching out, even, 6.5, 7 years later, are reaching out to me just saying, hey, we're here for you. We're thinking about you today. But now today, I'm okay talking about it. I've had time to process the loss of my wife and my dad. And it just makes it actually, I get to share my story and the way I was able to get through it. And hopefully, how I've gotten through it is a way that maybe other people can get through it. Not to say it could be the same, because every death is different. Every relationship you have with the person you lose is different. And that'll depend on the level of grief that you have, is with really the relationship you had with that person.
I love that because it's true. And as you mentioned, and by the way, we have a few people. Welcome, Sherilyn and Kathy, for coming onto the show. Thank you so
Morning.
much. Again, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments, and we'll definitely answer them today. But I think too, like I think people, when you something else that in our research about grief, right?
Yeah.
Creating rituals to remember your loved one can provide comfort. People have set up, I know a friend who lost a child, and she set up an angel tree in her home.
Yeah.
And she finds little ornaments that are angels, and she leaves it up all year long, and little pictures of her daughter. And it's such a beautiful remembrance that her daughter is still in her life, and she has gotten over that heavy grief
Yes.
that comes. But I think it's just a little thing that makes her smile as she passed. And again, that's for her. It's not
Yep.
for everyone. But I think when you give honor to the person's memory, like, oh my gosh, remember that time
Yep.
your wife said this? Like, I knew your wife, Rhonda, and she
Yeah.
was absolutely lovely. And I still have a remembrance of her
Yeah.
that I look at, and she was such a dear person. So I think that is so important. Well, let's move on to the next
Sure.
question.
You bet.
We talked about. So, how is the best way for you personally to? And I don't know if it matters about a close friend versus someone who maybe is just more of a work related friend, or someone who's more
Sure.
of an acquaintance. But is of all the different ways to grieve in your experience, what have
Mhm.
you seen as the best way to grieve the loss?
For other people, I think is definitely the engagement. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people become recluse and they kind of shelter themselves because they don't want to talk about it. They want to avoid it because of the pain and the hurt. But I remember during my loss, I got right back out into the community. I got back out there. I still went to like the Rotary Club. I still was engaged in all my service club organizations, all the board of directors. So I kept doing a lot of things. I scaled back a little bit, but I was still engaged. I needed to get engaged because I knew connecting with people was going to be important. So I think one of those things is connecting and then getting other people's views. We've all encountered grief at one point, and it may not even been the loss of a loved one. We might have gone grief by a divorce, loss of a job. There are a lot of ways that people have grief, and so it's talking about those situations and finding out how other people deal with those too might be a way to help you get through those areas of loss.
I love that. It's so true. Like my research is that grief is a journey that
Yeah,
takes time and patience. And when
absolutely.
you feel like you can talk about it with people, and as you said, I think that's brilliant. Ask how they went through it. Sometimes we take the
Absolutely.
focus off ourselves and ask other people. It shows not only that you care about them, but you
Mhm.
might not know that or realize that perspective.
That's
And it's
right.
so helpful to, and on that note, sometimes therapy is important. What would you say? Because sometimes if your grief is too heavy to bear,
Yes.
seeking help from a counselor or a therapist can be beneficial. What do you say about
It
that?
can be, and I believe in that because sometimes people feel really kind of maybe awkward sharing it with a friend or family member, and maybe sharing it with a neutral person. It could be that person could be a stranger, but then if you go to therapy and in here, or even a therapy group, when you go to a group when other people can share their stories and their experiences, it's very healing. It really, you realize that you're not in it alone. There's other people out there that are grieving, and if you hear their stories, you can understand their pain because you're feeling that same type of pain. And again, through time, the pain lessens, and then you get a little bit more wisdom and feelings and maturity about that grief that you can then share your story comfortably with other people.
That's wonderful. And is it true that I know through Thomas Miller Mortuary, when people have their service there and go through the whole process, isn't that part of what you offer? Free grief counseling?
We do. We have an aftercare program at our funeral home where we do have someone come out and talk to you a little bit, but we also have an online grief support too. So you can log in at your convenience from your home, from your laptop. You can go and there's like daily affirmations that you can get engaged with. And if you need some follow up with that, there's, I think, a link that you can go ahead and follow up with some additional, if you need some additional help. The churches are in our community. We are blessed with so many wonderful churches in the city of Corona Norco area that I would say reach out to your church, if and especially if you're a church going person. And if you're not a church going person, having faith is an important thing to have to get you through your grief. And that's one reason I was able to get through all my grief the way I did, is because of the faith I have, knowing where my wife and dad are, and that is comforting too,
Right.
knowing that. And so having faith and just believing in where we go after from here is an important part of healing and getting through your grief.
I love that. It's so true. I think there's a big difference. I've had a lot of death in my life, and seeing the difference of going through the funeral process with someone who has faith, and again, everyone has their own faith, um, is such a difference from people who don't, because there's a sense of hope
Yep.
that you again will see them someday. And without that faith, I think that hopelessness is, I think, is a very hard part of grief.
And Mary, I like to say this is probably where I've learned my dealing with grief is by working with all the families I've served over the 25 years plus in the funeral business. When people come in and are dealing with the loss of a loved one, and I've seen the way people have dealt when people don't deal with it well, and I see it when people deal with it very well. And I've learned actually how to deal with my grief when I lost my wife from the people that I've served over all these years. And I knew what I didn't want to do, and I saw what I wanted to do. And so I chose to do the things that were going to get me through my grief by seeing how other people grieved properly through their loss.
Wow, that is amazing. So you used your own experience from your work to
Yeah,
help with your own personal life. Actually, that's something that I was reading about, is that experiencing deep loss often leads to increased empathy and compassion.
yeah,
So I'm sure that the difference, so tell me about that. Like, from, you were in the funeral business your whole life,
sure.
but you're obviously, I mean, your father, I mean, we all know that our parents are hopefully going to die before us.
Yes.
It seems weird, but you know,
No, it's true.
but when you lose your wife, there's difference. So tell me, how did you, how did your work change
Sure.
after the death of your wife?
Well, and what was really odd, I was almost in the funeral business, serving families for 15 years until I lost my dad back in 2006. I never really I lost a grandparent, but losing a grandparent is expected. Losing a parent is expected, but not losing them in their 60s, like my dad. So that was and it was also a sudden death. So it was something it was a change in our family dynamics at a sudden moment. Um, then when my wife passed away in 2017, she had a lingering illness with cancer, and so we had time to prepare, and we were able to get through that. So I had different stages of grief with each one of them because they were all different situations in different times. And so learning from the people I've served, though, uh, is about being engaged, not closing down, being able to share, talk about your loved one, remembering your loved one, doing things maybe throughout the year to memorialize them, and it doesn't have to be forever. Your memorializations change. And so the first 3 or 4 years when we did things for my wife on her anniversary of her death, we did certain things. Now I still just give back to the church's food pantry because that's what she loved to do. She worked at the food pantry. We gave back. So I annually do things for the food pantry at the church to memorialize her and to remember her. And when I go back in there and share, all the people that still are there, they're like, oh, we remember Rhonda. She was such a great help to us there. And so those things were important, I think, for us getting through those things.
That's wonderful. I was talking about how it affected your work as a funeral director,
Okay.
being, now knowing personally how the loss of your, even though it was a long illness and
Yeah.
that you did it. So how did that alter your work?
So it changed because at first, since I didn't experience death, I didn't have that empathy or for people to really understand how they were feeling. But after I lost my wife, I had a better understanding how to deal and helping people once I went through it. because it was very odd being in the funeral business and not losing that loved one. I was helping people, but I didn't understand their their loss. I didn't understand their pain that they were in until I experienced it. So I was able then to be a better funeral director by experiencing it myself. So it came full circle. So ever since my wife passed away, I've had more empathy towards people. I have understandings. I'm more engaging with those people and trying to reach out and give them a hug and say, hey, I feel what you're going through. I understand what you're going through. So I have that better understanding. And so then they'll ask me, well, what did you do? How do you feel? It's like, is it going to get any better? And so I can explain my interpretation of how it is since I had finally gone through it.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. I love this perspective. Something else that in thinking about grief and obviously both of us dealing with it on our in our own way, but in researching it, it's
Yes.
kind of a invisible string that runs through is that a death or, as you said, a divorce or
Yeah.
and
Lots
different things in your life can cause grief, loss of a job, and there's so many things, but it also can prompt a reevaluation of your priorities and your values. Have you seen in your experience, I don't know if you can, again, I know you're not prepared for this question, but have you seen anyone's life like all of a sudden go, oh my gosh, I might not have as much time as I thought. Witnessing this death or having this grief has made me wake up and do something I might not have done because I now know life is short.
um I haven't really, but life is short. We never know when our last day here is. We all have a purpose, though. We all have our God given purpose, and our purpose will be here until it is complete. And that's why some of our life is cut short. And some people have lost children or lost a spouse at a young age. There's a reason for that. And it's maybe to make you grow as a person and maybe to help somebody later on down in life down that road. And that's why we're still here, Mary, is because we still have a purpose. You've encountered a lot of death. I've encountered a lot of death. I've helped people getting through their loss of their loved ones too. And I think until that time comes, there's a reason why we lose the people that we do is to make us build our character so we can help other people further on down the line in the future.
I love that. Yeah, I think there's a way, and you know, not just in grief, but in anything in life. Ever if we ever have a loss in business or if we have an issue with a friend, I think we're given those, as you said, to strengthen that muscle so we can
Yeah,
turn around and help somebody get
yeah,
through that when you see them. I think there's nothing wasted
that's right.
in it. Oh, we have Becky here. Becky, there is no demerits for showing up late. I love that you're here. Thank you so much. Becky is actually a local expert in this. She helps so many people through this process. So, Becky, if you have anything you want to add in the comments, we would sure love you to do that. So, thank you for joining us today. So,
Just to
let's,
put before you move on, just to put a plug in for Becky. Becky is a wonderful community person who started our TIP program here in Corona, and TIP is for Trauma Intervention Program, and she has helped literally thousands of people over 30 years in our community with her team of volunteers. It's an amazing program, and so
yes.
kudos to Becky and all her volunteers for helping the people of Corona, Norco, and Eastville. It's amazing all the things they do, and what they do is they help transition when there's a traumatic event here in our community. They help transfer from when the police and the fire department are there. Their volunteers come in and help the families kind of get through those first day, the first hours and
Right.
days of their loss. They are such a vital team. They're true angels in our community. That is true.
They definitely are. And I don't think I even, I've had friends who've been in the program, and I don't think people realize how important that is when there's a fire or there's a police activity for someone, just at someone out of the community expecting nothing, but just to
Yep.
be there to put their arm around you and
Yep.
comfort you, to be there for the children. Like there's like a fire, like they
Yeah.
bring them a blanket and like say, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. And just like, and then giving them resources. I could cry. It's so
Yep.
important. And I hope every community has a group like TIP. So Becky, if you're listening to this, I think you need to franchise this and bring it across the country because I
There
think
we
it's
go.
Oh goodness, we do have people chiming in for this. Yes, Becky is amazing. Camille says Becky is a true angel. That's awesome. Oh, and and Keisha is joining us too. That's awesome. Thanks you guys
Morning.
for coming in. So again, Becky, I hope you feel the love. That's awesome. All right, so the next question I had was on the
Yeah.
5 stages of grief, and people talk about like, oh, I'm stuck in the anger part or I'm stuck
Yeah.
in the depression. But the 5 are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So can you tell us a little bit about the stages and how to get through them, or at least what you've experienced?
Like I said, everybody deals with them differently, and the timelines of each of those stages can be different too. And as I mentioned earlier, it's about the relationship you have with the person that you've lost. Um, Sometimes you can get through those stages within several weeks to a couple months and be transitioned fairly simple. Sometimes it could take years. And if you're struggling getting through all those stages, that's when you need to reach out for some additional help and guidance. This journey can't be taken alone. You don't go through grief alone. You need family support, and if you have a small family or a family that is spread out across the country, then reach to your closest confidant, your closest friends. And if you don't have close friends, that's when you need to reach out to your church or to get some clinical help at a local therapist to talk to. It's important that you express yourself. I see so many people shut down, and so many people, families get together, and there's so much anger and so much remorse and contention amongst each other. It just drives me nuts when I see families do that. And it's life is so short, and you need to cherish the times that you have with those people. And so, again, getting through those times of grief, those stages, it's very sensitive. And if you need help with one of those stages, if it's the anger stage or the denial stage, and you're struggling, reach out for help. Um, Go on to our grief online. It's private. You could do it in your own home from your computer. If you reach out to your pastor, reach out to your church, reach out to a close friend. Those people will help you. If you know of a friend that has lost someone, those are the people you need to reach out to too, because they have gone through it. And if you see that they've gone through it and are somewhat well adjusted and back out into the community, they've done something right. And maybe you can pick their brain on how they were able to get through those times of their loss so you can get through those transitions, because you need to get to the point of acceptance. And when you get to the acceptance, then you can move on, and then you can go out, and then you can be the professional in helping others in the future.
Exactly. And it sounds weird to say that you're a professional in grief, but literally, if you've gone through it yourself, you are farther ahead than someone who hasn't
That
uh,
is true.
been through it. Something else that I think we should also touch on is that I think that right now everyone's all about self love, self care, and everything.
Yes.
But it is so true. You need to figure out a way to take care of your physical and your
Yes.
mental health during a time of grief, right? No matter what kind
Well,
of grief. We're talking about death a lot, but like we said before, divorce, loss of a job,
yeah.
God forbid, a loss of a child. Like, I mean, that's obviously death,
Yeah.
um, but I think people find comfort in walking, reading, meditating, praying,
Absolutely.
crafting. I mean, eat something that keeps, my dad used to say, idle hands are the devil's workshop. It's like keeping busy while you go through those stages to get to the point where you accept, yes, they are gone, and
Yes.
I'm going to honor their legacy by doing good in the something that maybe you can kind of think like you said about the food pantry. And by the way, Mike said that yes, Tip was there when he needed it.
Awesome.
Again, it's awesome. And Becky said that she was actually dispatching a volunteer to an unattended death
Oh,
while she was late to the show. So
oh,
it's just an angel in action. So
yes,
thank
she
you,
is.
Becky. And Becky, again, if you have anything you want to ask a question of or share a comment, we're also would love to share resources. So anything that you can add with that would be fantastic.
Great.
Um, and again, something that the other questions that we talked about was how does grief change the way that you see the world?
Well, I definitely see the world differently. Like you said, we're here for a certain time, and we don't know when our time is up. But we don't take our I don't take my time for grant, and I that's why I give back as much as I can of my time, treasures, and talents to my community and to my family, um, because that's what we're here for. And I don't want to leave anything undone. Um, when life is taken short, it's a sad situation and it's hard. But and I've seen so many loss of young people in our community, tragedies. Um, and your wonder was like, boy, what would have their purpose been if they were still here today? But there was a reason why they were taken from us when they were. And so we need to move forward with that legacy for those people that we might have lost. But if not, cherish what you have, go out and make a difference. Go out and make a difference to someone personally, make a difference in your community, or go out and make a difference within the world. I think that's why we're here. And when you've gotten through your grief and you're at that point where you adjusted, where you can move on and function, that's when you got to go out there and accept making that difference and put your footprint or your stamp on doing. And that's why it's like when you've gone through your grief and you've become, quote, your own personal professional, become a tip volunteer, because you can help people when they've lost their loved ones. Go out there and spread your wisdom and love to others, because love makes the world go around. And if we can be well adjusted and spread love, when people really are needing love is when they're hurting and when they're grieving. And that's all we can do as human beings is spread a good, positive, loving experience to those that are in a grief state at that time.
I love that. Those are such great ideas. Um, yeah, I mean, like people have done amazing things
Yeah.
using their grief as a power source, so to speak, an inspiration. Writing
Yes.
a book about your loved one, even if it's just making a scrapbook for yourself. To leave. Let's say, like I know when my mother died, we put together a tribute video, and every year on her death, for the first few years, after a while
Yeah.
we did, we
Yeah.
would watch that video together and laugh about all of her.
Mhm.
We had little sound of her voice, like laughing, and it was just, oh, like she was here again, right? And we had
Yep.
picture books. And I just recently, my mother passed away in 2005, and I just recently found in an old box a scrapbook of her college years,
Wow.
letters from her friends, and like she had taped them all in so meticulously, and pictures. I found um, a restaurant menu, and prime rib, $1.25.
Wow.
I'm
Those
like
were the days.
like appetizers were like 20 cents. Like I'm like, what? I should take a picture and post it. It was absolutely crazy. But it was like it brought back like, wow, she lived such an amazing life. And I think that's something too, is focusing on the beauty and the joy that the person brought you, and the memories and the laughter and the things that you shared in your life. And if there wasn't a lot of laughter, sometimes we'll have you know a hard relationship. Focusing on the lessons that you learn. Sometimes hard lessons
Yeah.
are lessons still, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, we have Becky actually had some ideas. She said that three key points to keep in mind:
Yes.
that everyone grieves differently.
Yes.
So true. And there's no right or wrong way to do it, right? So
Nope.
it's so when people say, "Well, you're not grieving," well, hello,
Yeah.
it's your story. Like you grieve the way you want. I love that,
That's
Becky.
right.
She also said, allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah.
recognizing that it's okay. It's your feelings, and everything is validated. I love
That's
that.
right.
Yeah. And no, the last thing she said here. Oh, actually, this is Kathy. It's important to focus on the physical well-being when grieving. Um,
I agree.
yeah, you can't just become a recluse, like you said.
No, you can't. And just another little side note to myself is when my wife was going through her illness and I was her caregiver, um, I was there for her night and day, doing anything and everything I can to give her the comfort that she needed through those 4.5 years. I forgot about me. For those 4.5 years, I never went to the doctor. I didn't like work out. I didn't eat right. I didn't do vitamins. I was letting myself go. And I realized after her passing and we lost Rhonda that I had to be here for my kids. I had to like start looking out for myself. I had a purpose now that I need to be here to hopefully be a grandpa someday. So it's like, hey, I'm going to start working out. I'm going to, start getting massage, taking care of myself, eating better, taking vitamins because I want to be here as long as I can to be here for my family. Since my wife's not here for my kids, I've got to be here for my kids and hopefully my grandkids someday.
I love that. They're when you are on a plane, right, and they're give you instructions.
Yep.
If the plane is in distress, you put the mask on yourself first, then you give it to your children. Because if
That's
you can't breathe, how are you going to help your children?
exactly.
Yeah, so
You got to.
that's a very good insight. Is that
And so
you
many people forget about themselves, they when they're taking care of others and stuff. So Grant, you're getting through your grief, but you also got to take care of yourself and do your self-care and take care of don't become a recluse. Don't be a shut-in. You've got to get out so you can make a difference and be there for the rest of your family.
right? Because that's not what your loved one wants. They don't
No,
want you to die like within
no.
a day or two of them. Like, and some people think that I can't go on without this
Yeah.
person. And they think it's easier if I just die because then I could be with them in heaven
Yeah.
faster. But that's not what they would want for you.
No,
They would want you to be happy and joyful and learn that,
absolutely.
bring whatever gifts they gave into your life that you could pass on to others. Um,
Absolutely.
I think that is so important. Becky
Yeah.
actually gave us the link to her group, tipcorona.org, if you want to learn
Perfect.
more about possibly volunteering for that.
Absolutely.
I love that, or just learning about what they do because I'm sure they if you're looking for ways to donate, I'm sure they would accept that as well.
You bet.
And Sharon actually has said this is very insightful, so I'm so glad, Sherilyn, that you're getting some
Thank you.
comfort from this. So, Chris, we're rounding out the half hour that we usually do the show.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? I know we've covered so many amazing topics.
We have. I think we've covered a pretty good broad aspect of grief today. And again, if there's any other questions out there, feel free to throw them into the chat, and we can. And maybe in a couple weeks we'll do a multiple types of questions and do any follow ups from questions that we've had in the past, and we'll just kind of do an open forum format for those questions that we haven't addressed. So if you weren't able to be participant today, log in your questions, text them to us, email them to us, and we'll add them to our next couple episodes.
I love that idea. That is so great. And Becky said there's really great resources on that website as well. So make sure you go to tipcorona.org and learn about more resources. Also, I thought this is a good time to announce the next two shows. So
Yeah.
we try to go live a couple times a month. So we have scheduled the first and third week of February. So we have the 2nd of February and then the
The 19th,
16th.
16th.
So the 2nd and the 16th. There's also a lot of opportunities to come learn more about planning your legacy.
Yes.
Chris, your organization does what we call Lunch and Learns. And
Yes.
also we have, we're going to be giving seminars on the senior centers, the Janet Goski Center, as well as the Valencia Terrace and Estancia del Sol. We're going to have
Yes.
theme events. So if you're interested in coming, and Chris is always so generous, either buying you lunch or giving you little gifts to come.
Yes.
And it's talking about basically figuring out, because none of us want to be a burden to our family members.
No.
So just let's end with that. So what is the benefit of pre-planning your services?
The two biggest benefits is relieving the burden off your family. If you take the opportunity and the time to put all your wishes on paper to let your family know, because so many families don't communicate about their wishes upon death. So come on down, put all your wishes on paper. That's one. The next one is it locks the price in at today's price. So if you're kind of a price conscientious type of person, you can lock the price in at today's price, make payments over several years, and you're paying today's price. So you got another 25 years to live. You're not going to pay the price in 25 years. You're going to pay the price today. So those are the two biggest benefits on pre-planning and preparing, relieving the burden and locking in the price.
I love that. Also, you can also tell people what you want. Like you want a certain song sang,
Absolutely.
want
You
it to be in a
put down all your wishes. You put down if you want burial or cremation. You put down the type of services, the type of music. You could even put down the color of lipstick you want.
I love
Yeah,
that's great.
all
And
your wishes.
I think what I love about you having the show, Chris, is that it makes it more comfortable to talk about because you know what?
Yeah,
Death and taxes. I mean, it's
inevitable.
inevitable, right? We were designed to be here for a short time, so it's important that we um, live this life to its fullest. That
Yeah,
we take advantage of every opportunity that God gives us and walk through those doors and help as many people live their best life as well, because that's what will bring us fulfillment. So
that's right.
when it's our time to go, people will come to our service and say, "Wow,
That's right.
they made a difference in my life." I actually have shivers. Like you want people to say, "Wow, they made a big difference
That's right.
in our life." So,
We're
oh,
here.
and I forgot, I wanted to ask you about your title there. Tell
Yes.
everybody what you're the president of OGR this year. What is OGR?
OGR. I've this year I've had the honor of being president of OGR, which is Order of the Golden Rule, and we're an international independent funeral home organization that brings like-minded independent family-owned funeral homes together so we can share our stories. We're our own support group, and we also come together to educate each other on trends in our industry. And so this year, again, I have the privilege and honor of spearheading and leading our organization. We're going to be having our international conference here this coming May, and it's going to be down in Savannah, Georgia. So I'm looking forward to that, where my term will end. But this year, I've been able to travel to Toronto. I've been able to travel across the country and visit many independent funeral directors, and just share our stories and hear their stories and their struggles on how our industry is changing and how we can come together and help each other out. So I'm just thrilled and honored to help and be an advocate to our independent funeral homes here in the United States and North America and around the world.
That's awesome. Thank you for serving in that way. That's
You
awesome.
bet.
So actually, Becky agrees with you that the greatest gift you can give your family is to talk about your wishes,
Yep.
right? So they are not left wondering about it. And something that you brought up earlier, and also Sherilyn said to live, laugh, and love. That is really it sounds like it's always painted on signs, but it's so true.
Got to do
I
it.
think that life comes down to it. And again, just to round out this show today on grief, is that, let your family and friends know you love them
Yes.
and let them know that no matter what happens, that they've been a blessing in your life. And I think that that will be a comfort to them if something happened, because we are not guaranteed a tomorrow,
No, we're not.
as you said. And so I think that just having this open conversation is going to really help other people. So again,
Yeah.
if you have enjoyed the information here, please share this show on your own social media.
Yeah.
You could tag a friend in the comments and hopefully they'll see that, because I think as we've said in the show that everyone grieves in their own way. And
Yes.
we need to give people space to grieve in their own way. And I think that Chris, you're doing such an amazing job. But your staff helps
Thank
people
you.
with that every
Yes.
single day. So yes, Kathy said, "Thank you for addressing this topic." Yes, it's so important. All right. So until next time on
Alrighty.
February 2nd, put your comments down below. Email Chris anything you have, and we'll answer those questions on the second. And until then, thank you, Chris, for
Thank
all the
you.
work you're doing. And guys, we'll see you next time
Great.
and have a fabulous the rest of the month.
You bet. See you next month. Bye bye.
Bye.